Before working on the tense lax distinction, we recommend that you begin by concentrating on the four tense vowels of English, the vowels E, U, and O, as in bid, bade, boot, and bode. Try tongue twisters such as the following to practice producing these sounds. Those, we, thugs, think, that, they, through, those, things, there. Natural speech results, in large part, from looking and sounding, and feeling, confident. People make judgments about us as a result of how we look and how we sound. Thus, if you look and sound extremely tense, people will be uncomfortable listening to you. It may sound insincere to say it, but if you look and sound confident, people will pay attention to what you say. Spanish speakers usually insert a vowel at the beginning of the word. For example, I speak Spanish is pronounced I speak Spanish. Pronounce words that contain these vowels, concentrating on relaxing the facial muscles. Sit, book, mess, push, boot, red, hood, window. Exaggerate your pronunciation of each vowel sound in B, B, boo, and bow. Smile when pronouncing these vowels. In order to laugh correctly, or pronounce words like happy, please follow carefully the instructions. The vocal folds are partially abducted to create a narrowing of the airway. Lip and tongue configuration varies depending on phonetic context. The bilopharyngeal port is closed. Air forced under pressure through the laryngeal narrowing creates audible frictional turbulence. Happy. One of the great things about learning Spanish or English is that many words have the same roots. There are also words that can only sometimes be translated by the similar word in the other language. Learning Spanish or English is the perfect gift for someone that wants to gain an instant edge in their relationship. Why strain your voice with yelling or nagging when you can learn Spanish or English? No way, Jose. Avoid unnecessary knocking and noise. My first contact with the English language happened when I was 6 and had just entered a bilingual Catholic school for boys in my home country.
I have a question.
To Spanish speakers, the English language sounds like an indecipherable nasal dialect.
I have another question.
Why are we here? How long do we have to stay? Why do I have to learn this language?
Mango, white, manzana, apple.
Listening is the first step to learning. If you can understand others when they speak, you can imitate what they say and try to speak their way.
Pollo, chicken.
You can travel to the country where the language is spoken and feel comfortable, be able to fit in, and even work.
I am learning English.
Be able to fit in and even work.
A, B, C, D, E, F.
Many people say that when they have to speak a second language and live in that language daily, it can happen that they develop another personality in the second language, different to the one they exhibit in their mother tongue.
Es que no me lo sé bien. H, I, J, K, L.
This can be interesting and open up a new world to you.
B, Q, R, S.
Learning another language will make different parts of your brain work and can improve your memory.
Vaca, perro, gato. Can I go to the bathroom?
Yes, you can, but you may not.
May I go to the bathroom?
In that way, I understood the subtle difference that exists in English between being capable and actually being able to perform a given action.
I am learning English.
You understand, I am cleaning these erasers just because I didn't do well in my first English lesson. I have to clean them until I have swallowed enough chalk dust to make me high. Thus, my English education began in harness.
I am learning English.
Slide video. Green screen. Camera, are you ready?
And we're ready.
Can I have lights, please? Mixer is ready. Camera, are you ready?
And we're ready.
And we're rolling.
And we're rolling.
This is an empty body, or latent body. Here is a blank body that needs to get some English into it. It is a dummy. Imagine, this is an empty body, a latent body. Put some color to it. Some of you have received a stack of post-it notes. When asked a question, simply write your answer on a note and stick it on the dummy. You will be rewarded somehow.
Which part of your body usually aches when sitting down for long?
When you have your answers, you can come down and stick them on the dummy.
Which part of your body have you injured?
Which part of your body?
Which part of your body do you like most?
Which part of your body do you like least? Which part of your body would you like to cover? Which part of your body would you like to show us? Name one part of your body that you cannot kiss.
Name one part of your body that you cannot see.
Feel free to kiss the dummy.
What probably causes stress in your life? What probably causes stress in your life?
Name some human body parts that are only 3 letters long in the English language.
So you have to think about that. Eye,
Jaw,
rib,
Arm,
leg,
leg, ear, toe, lip,
lip,
and
gum.
gum.
We encourage applicants to bring documents that may help demonstrate their qualifications. Please note that presenting these documents does not guarantee anything. A valid passport, a national identity card,
etc. Documents needed for mortgage. Documents needed for driver's license. Documents needed for employment.
documentary, documents needed for visitor visa, documents needed for visa application, documents needed for visa interview,
Documents needed for visa application. Documents needed for visa interview.
documents related to your family ties, such as birth, baptism, and marriage certificates.
A complete and signed Form DS-156.
Form I-9, Form 941, Form W-9, Form W-4, Forms of Government, Forms of Birth Control, forms of energy, forms of poetry, forms of communication, forms of art, forms of depression, forms of dementia, forms of democracy, forms of dance, forms of discrimination, forms of divination.
The personal interview and the information provided on the application forms are critical. Forms of abuse, forms of comedy, forms of exercise, forms of entertainment, forms of emotional abuse, forms of expression, forms of fiction, forms of figurative language, forms of fighting, forms of feminism, forms of fetishism,
forms of gambling, forms of harassment, forms of humor, forms of identification, forms of irony, forms of intelligence, forms of inquiry, forms of justice, forms of journalism, forms of knowledge, forms of kissing, forms of kidnapping, forms of literature,
etc., 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 etc. Points to keep in mind. It's not luck. Despite what some people might tell you, luck has nothing to do with it. Officers base their decisions solely on the forms. Forms of prayer, forms of punishment, forms of payment, forms of prejudice, forms of rhetoric, forms of racism, forms of speech, forms of torture, forms of therapy, forms of unarmed combat.
Forms of love, forms of learning, forms of media, forms of meditation, forms of music, forms of nonverbal communication, forms of narration,
forms of words, forms of written communication,
forms of poetry, forms of wit.
Memories. Memories of nobody. Memories that fade like photographs. Memories are made of these
forgotten realms, forgotten English words, forgotten events, forgotten of events, forgotten evil. Forms of prayer, forms of punishment, forms of payment, forms of prejudice, forms of rhetoric, forms of racism, forms of speech, forms of torture, forms of therapy, forms of unarmed combat. We encourage applicants to bring documents that may help demonstrate their qualifications. Please note that presenting these documents does not guarantee anything. Please note that presenting these documents does not guarantee anything. This is an invisible man. You will hardly believe that he exists. Don't you know him? Do you see him?
I am as transparent as air in this desperate stage.
Look at this man, revolting in front of you.
I am not much, but I give a damn.
He might even be said to possess a mind. You will not believe he is invisible.
Light passes through me and around me. No one will see me come, no one will see me go.
This is an invisible man because people refuse to see him.
I tell you, it is not me you are looking at. Do not forget for an instant that, though you cannot see me, I can see you all the time. It will remain our main objective to attain invisibility. We have determined that our highest purpose will be to disappear. It will remain our main objective to attain invisibility. We have determined that our highest purpose will be to disappear, 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 disappear.